Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I'm your host, Coach Che Marville. In this space, we dive into transformative conversations that hopefully inspire you to grow, heal, and have a deeper connection to yourself and to the world around you. So, let's talk, let's connect, let's grow together. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk. I am, of course, very excited about who I have in the pod today, but it's a little more personal, my friends. I want to introduce you to a man who has actually, and he doesn't really know, he has actually changed my life. About 3 years ago when I walked into Good Life Fitness, really struggling with perimenopause and a number of things that were going on in my life, about 30 pounds over my normal weight. A gentleman who has helped to transform how I feel, and someone who has traveled around the world, has been a chef, has been a hockey player, and now is a fitness expert. He probably wouldn't say he is. His name is Bruno St. Aubin. This man sat me down and said, why don't we use weights? And let's not look at the number on the scale. He's like, I'm going to weigh you once, and then we're just going to go and practice. Bruno, welcome to Let's Talk.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. This is an interesting endeavor for me. I've never been on a podcast before, so...
Which is shocking.
Yeah, well, I mean, maybe. I mean, but it's something that I find interesting. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I've always thought that it would be something that I would like to try. And, you know, you mentioned earlier that you think I should have a podcast. So I don't know, maybe that's something that I can tackle in the future.
I actually think you should have a podcast. And the only reason I said I'm surprised that, you know, you've never been on a podcast is that you're a prolific talker in English and French.
and Spanish a little bit too.
And Spanish. So I think, you know, one of the things that I loved about us working together was all the storytelling. And you have done so many things. You've traveled extensively around the world.
Yeah.
How did you get into traveling? Like, before we go into, you know, weightlifting and personal training, all that kind of good stuff.
Well, diving deep back into early life, you know, my family, I've lived all over Canada. I was born in Montreal. I grew up in northern Alberta, eventually moved to Ontario, to Waterloo, where I went to high school. But even when we lived in Alberta, we used to travel back to Quebec to visit my relatives. So, you know, there was that, you know, the flying that was so exciting when you're 5, 6, 7 years old,
yeah.
And, you know, going places, and, you know, living in Alberta, because it's such an amazing place in terms of, you know, nature and things to see. We used to travel a lot through BC and through Alberta, through the mountains, and go on like 2-week vacations, driving through the mountains and stuff like that. So that sense of adventure was innate, and it just really extracted it out of me at such an early age. So the bug was bitten, or bit me very early on in my life.
Did you end up in Ontario because of hockey, or
No.
how did you go from Alberta to Ontario?
So my dad was working for a company in Edmonton, and he was recruited by one of his clients, as best as my memory can remember. So that company was based out of Wisconsin. They were based out of a place just south of Green Bay. It was called Fort Atkinson, Wisconsin. So they initially wanted us to move to Wisconsin. So the plan was that essentially at first we were going to move to Madison, Wisconsin, and my dad really wanted to keep his family in Canada. So,
yes.
And he was going to be traveling around for work a lot. So he just thought, you know, he convinced them or negotiated with them to stay in Canada. So we ended up in Waterloo.
Both your parents are French Canadian?
Yeah.
but not from Quebec.
They are both, yeah.
They're both from Quebec.
My parents, my dad grew up in downtown Montreal, and my mom grew up just off the coast of just outside of Montreal, kind of in the suburbs. And my mother didn't learn how to speak English until we moved to Alberta. She was sort of forced to start to
Really?
learn. So I used to say some bad things to her when I was a little kid that she never understood. And then when she figured it out, she was like, I can't believe you used to say that to me.
Did you see a big difference between Ontario and Alberta?
Oh, massive. Massive. I mean, I grew up in northern Alberta, and traveling for hockey, it was like, you had to drive minimum 1 hour to go play a game, and sometimes we had to drive 3 or 4 hours to play games. Whereas in Ontario, when I moved to Waterloo, it was like the furthest place you'd have to drive is maybe an hour. Like Waterloo to London was probably about the furthest we would have to go for a hockey game. So that difference in itself was very apparent, but just the population of southwestern Ontario was so massive. So there was just so many places to visit, so many things to do.
Culturally, was it similar, different?
Culturally was massively different.
Really?
Yeah, I grew up in a small town in northern Alberta. There was not a lot of visual differences in terms of different races and different cultures and stuff like that. It was
more cohesive, more homogenous, and then you moved to southern Ontario.
Yeah, then I moved to Waterloo, and it was like there was everything. There was people from India, like Indian backgrounds, black, everything. So it was much more of a melting pot in Ontario than Alberta. Yeah, it was a huge difference.
And what was the hockey culture like?
The hockey culture that's a hard one, because typically you would look at the hockey culture in Ontario as being a little bit better than it would be there's such a huge amount of people that play hockey in Ontario, and the population is so dense.
Yes.
Whereas in Alberta, it's not. But the dichotomy is, I found, was the team that I played on in Alberta was my last year in Alberta, we were provincial champions. So then when I came to Ontario, I played on one of the worst teams I've ever played on. I went from being like an average player on my team in Alberta to one of the best players on my team in Ontario. In Alberta, when I grew up in a small town, there was nowhere for anybody to go and play. So the best players stayed home.
Right.
Whereas in Ontario, when I moved here to Waterloo, all of the best players from the year before went to play in different places, because they started to get to that age where it started to matter now. Right.
And it matters who you're playing with and
who you're playing for.
Yeah, who you're playing for, yeah.
Whereas all of the best players on my team in Alberta, there's nowhere to go.
Did you want to be a professional hockey player?
Absolutely. But, in Canada, you've got a better chance of winning the lottery than...
Why? What do you mean?
Well, you can have, all the skill in the world, but there's just so many kids that play hockey in Ontario and in all across Canada that, you've got to have a certain specific talent or specific skill set that somebody's looking for in the NHL. So, I was by no means anywhere close to becoming a professional hockey player. Like, I don't look back at my life and go, had I just done this, had I just done that, I could have been a pro hockey player. There's definitely things, which I'm sure we'll get into in a little bit later, in terms of strength training and muscle development, that had I had that kind of coaching when I was younger, that I could have definitely gone further in hockey. But I wasn't, I didn't have a chance of being a professional hockey player. So
that wasn't a big disappointment. It was just kind of a process that you grew out of? Yeah, it was, that coming to that realization, it depends on who you have around you, right? Who's in your ear. Because when you're 17, you can have somewhat a delusion, you think, I'm a pretty good hockey player. I think I have a chance of doing this and I have a chance of doing that. And if you don't have the right people in your ear saying, maybe not, you should start focusing on your school, you should start focusing on your education, because it's not likely, even if you can go pretty far in hockey, it's not likely that you're going to make it. It's, interesting. I don't think it's a delusion. I think it's your imagination. But if you don't have the right people around you who have the same belief and also know how,
100%.
It's almost impossible, right?
100%.
So how did you go from, because this is really like, you're saying you weren't trying to be a professional hockey player, but
No, I was.
or you were, but
I just didn't realize that I didn't have the skill or the talent.
that's not true.
Because I was playing a decent level of hockey. I just,
Yes.
it's like when you're 16, 17, you don't understand that there's just like, you look back at it now and you're like, I wasn't shooting pucks 500 times a day. I wasn't skating 20 times a week.
Yes.
Like I
You
wasn't.
didn't wake up with I'm gonna hit it, 600 times. I'm gonna try to get into the net like as much as I can.
It was more for me. It was just more, but I just wanted to play. Like I played a lot.
Yes.
But I just wanted to play. I hated practicing. I don't want to say I hated practicing, but I just liked playing hockey. And I didn't understand at that age that, you need to put in this kind of time and that kind of time, and you need to work on these things and you need to work on those things.
So it's a mindset.
It's definitely a mindset. And like I said, if you don't have the right people around you, like I'm not, by no means am I blaming my parents, but my parents weren't sports people, so they weren't like that wasn't in their resume. Like, oh, you need to put in these kind of hours, you need to put in these kind of things. They just basically drove me around to my games and to my practices, which I'm super grateful for. But they weren't like, you need to get out in the backyard, you need to shoot the puck 500 times.
They weren't Venus and Serena's dad.
They were not.
Right, and that story is so fascinating.
Unbelievable.
Like his vision and determination
gives me goosebumps just talking about it.
I got the same. Like it's crazy. And I think as a parent also, there's a lot of pressure to get your kids into the right places, but it's also about understanding what they need. And when I watched that movie, I kept thinking, like, how do you override the needs of your kids in the immediate to follow and pursue a dream that you haven't even fulfilled, but you're just so focused on it? It's extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, their father was an extraordinary person. He had a specific direction and path that he wanted for his daughters, and it was unrelenting. He was like, this is what we need to do, and this is what we're going to do. And even though I'm sure he got some resistance from his daughters at certain times, that they were like, this is a bit much,
Yes.
But they reaped the rewards for that, for sure. One of the things that I remember that I liked about that movie is that they were focusing on Venus Williams so much that you were like, but hang on a second, did they not realize that Serena was actually the better player? And they didn't really indicate that in the movie until the end.
Yes.
He was like, he said to his daughter Venus, like, you're the best player in the world. And then later on, he had a conversation with Serena and said, your sister's the best player in the world, but you're going to be the greatest player ever. And just that, like, it's like, wow.
I thought the same. And, one of the things I was thinking about, and we didn't talk about this movie at all, but let's just go on this tangent for a moment, is that one of the things that I thought was so fascinating was that I wondered if Serena would be who she is now if there was no Venus, right? Because it's like having that sibling that's pushing and going forward.
Yeah, for sure. That sibling rivalry, not even
the template, the
like,
patterning.
This is what she's doing, this is what I got to do, and if I want to be better than her, then I got to maybe even do a little bit more.
Yes, yeah. And now look at them. One's returning at 45.
Really?
To playing, right?
Is she? I didn't know that.
She's playing, and then and Serena is moving into being, a mogul influencer. So it's just a whole fascinating thing.
I am not up to date on their on their biography. But.
Listen, I like that you use the word unrelenting.
Yeah.
Because I feel like that is also a part of who you are at different parts of your life. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, certain times, to a certain degree, for sure. Absolutely.
How did you move from hockey to then like moving and traveling around the world? And for a long time, you wanted to be a chef. You were in the restaurant world.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm honest and I can think back, it was meeting two Australian guys that, you know, Australians were always famous for traveling around the world, and everywhere you went there was always Australians because they lived so far away from everything that they would leave Australia and they wouldn't travel for a couple of weeks. They would go and travel for a couple of years. And
yes.
I met a couple of guys from Australia that had been traveling for an extensive period of time, and they sort of started to, again, lift that interest out of me that I was like, okay, and that listening to them talk and the conversations about where they'd been and stuff like that, and I'm like, oh, I want to do that. I want to go there and I want to be there and whatnot. So, and then meeting people and having connections. So a combination of meeting these Australian guys. I worked in Alberta. I did an apprenticeship as a chef in Alberta, and I met an English guy there who said, if you ever come to England, you know, look me up. I could hook you up with some chef work, whatever, blah, blah, blah. And then I met these Australian guys, and they were going to head back to Europe at some point. And it was, you know, okay, well, this is an English guy there that I met, and then these two Australian guys that are going. So I started to develop a lot of interest in going to Europe and seeing what the possibilities were. Initially, one of the Australian guys and we actually went to Barbados.
Yes.
And we moved to Barbados. We rented a house with some Germans.
Did you?
And we were there for about 5 weeks. And again, this is all like, you know, trial by error, you know, like learning as you go by experience and stuff like that. And I didn't know about currency exchange rates and how much people got paid in certain countries and all of those kind of things. And so when I went to Barbados, you know, I didn't realize that, you know, you weren't going to get paid the same wages as you would in Canada. And the cost of living was, you know, it was harder. And so it never ended up working out. We were only there for about 5 weeks. We came back, and then he said he was going to go to Europe. And I'm like, all right, I'll come with you in a couple of months. And I ended up flying over there in December of 96. And I ended up spending just over a couple of years in Europe.
Was it the food? Was it the culture? Was it the pace of life? Like, what excited you or motivated you to be in that world?
The difference, mainly the difference in the place, you know, the architecture, the food, the people, the accents, all of it was just so exciting to me. I was just like, I just want to jump in and see what it's all about.
Did you always think you'd come back to Canada?
I wasn't sure. You know, initially, I only got a 6-month visa to go to England, and I ended up staying for 2 years. Part of the reason I came back is I was living and working in Greece as a bartender and partied a little bit too much. Needed to sort of decompress and get away from that. So I ended up going back to London. I had a girlfriend there from Sweden, and so we went back to re-engage that relationship, and then I sort of decided to go back to Canada for a little bit. I was young and didn't realize, you know, going back to Canada, you know, I wasn't made of money, right? So
of course,
all of this stuff costs money. So then when I got back to Canada, I said, to my girlfriend, I said, I'll be back in a month, you know, like no problem. I get back to Canada, I got no money, I have to get a job, save some more money to go back to Europe. Next thing you know, it's a year later, you know, and I never ended up going back.
And so, and at this time, you're working in the restaurant business
as a chef. Yeah.
As a chef, and you're moving around, you're learning, you're growing.
Yeah.
What's your plan at this point, or is it like a plan that's just morphing as you move to different restaurants?
At that point, I found my career. I was going to be a chef, and that was the life. And working in London, I learned quite quickly that I didn't maybe have as strong a passion for working in a kitchen or working as a chef as I thought I had, because I mean, I don't know if you've ever seen Gordon Ramsay on Hell's Kitchen when he's screaming and yelling at everybody, and that was the environment that you were working in when you were working as a chef. So you weren't getting paid well. You were working 12, 14, 16 hours a day. And they were screaming and yelling at you all the time. And so it was just like, eventually got to the point where it was just like, I don't know if the juice is worth the squeeze anymore.
Yes,
you know, like
yes,
it just
yes.
wasn't. So that led me to start bartending, start working as a waiter. And I just discovered that now I'm in front and I'm with people
Yep.
who are nice to me,
Yes,
who
yes.
want things from me. and are polite. And
Yeah.
so I was like, I like this. This is nice. And
Yeah.
so that is what led me to working in the front of the house, and then eventually into managing restaurants later on in Toronto.
And so did you imagine that you would have a restaurant and you would like maybe own a couple restaurants, or that you would just, you were just in that world?
Initially, yeah, that was an initial dream, was to eventually have my own place. I think that I spent a little too much time in the restaurant industry. I got into managing and sort of just started to discover the profit margins in restaurants weren't that great.
Yeah, it's a tough business.
It's a tough business.
It's like, and it's kind of like a combination of, you know, celebrity and suffering, and
Yeah.
and you really need a lot of funding to keep going, right?
Well, you have to be so specific with how you manage your time, your finances. You have to be extremely organized, because the rate of success is so minor, and your profit margins are so low. I mean, when you're working in the restaurant industry, if you're striving for a 3% profit margin, that's good.
Wow.
I mean, at least that's the way it
Wow.
was when I was in. I haven't been in the restaurant industry for over a decade now, but so if you're selling $1 million of food every year,
Yeah.
you're $30,000 is what you can expect to make as a profit.
Oh my God.
So now you have to consider that, you know, nobody's just taking the profits and that's all they're earning. They're obviously you know, giving themselves a salary and whatnot, but they're not giving themselves a high salary. So
No.
they're trying to sort of balance things out with the salary, a little bit of a salary and then a little bit of profit. So it's just a grind. It's a grind, and it just
Yeah.
never stops.
It's like, it's so fascinating to me, because I'm thinking about your mindset though. You're going from, you know, being a hockey player, you know, not a professional hockey
Right.
player, but I'm talking about the mindset of competition and playing and
Yeah.
and being really into the game, right?
Yeah.
Then going and traveling around the world, exploring, just kind of letting your interest, your curiosity, your, you know, girlfriends, right, travel, open you up to the rest of the world.
Yeah.
Then you come back, you're in the restaurant industry, and how do you go from that to then moving into personal training? And like, did you come at it from an athletic perspective, or being like an athlete? Were you competing, or did you go from it?
No.
No.
Not when I entered into being a personal trainer. I you know, obviously I played a lot of sports, so I was very competitive. You know, it was, there's a couple of things that happened.
Tell me.
I was starting to burn out in the restaurant industry. I was working, you know, because of my ambitions, because of my strive to be, you know, to play on the best hockey teams, and, you know, it translated also into, you know, I always wanted to work at the best restaurants. So the restaurant industry is very transient. So my direction was always like, who's doing the most exciting things right now? Who's doing the best kind of food? Who's the stuff that I really want to work with?
Yeah.
And, you know, because I developed such a good reputation and a good resume in the restaurant industry, I had the ability to do that. And it also extended me the ability to travel. I could work at a restaurant for a year and a half, learn as much as I possibly wanted, get bored of it, and then I could go travel for a couple months, come back, go work at a different restaurant. What happened to me in terms of like why I got into the fitness industry is around 2010, I did a massive trip around the world, and that was sort of like 2010, I was 37, and I was getting to that point where I was getting a little bit burnt out in the restaurant industry, and I thought, you know, I need to make a change. So I went on a big trip around the world for 6 months, trying to find myself, trying to see if light bulbs would go off or anything like that, and nothing happened. And like I said earlier, because I had a good resume and I had a good reputation in the restaurant industry, I was always getting emails and phone calls from people saying, hey, listen, so-and-so's opening up a new restaurant, or so-and-so's looking for some help. They need a manager, they need a waiter, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So it was like I never had to look for work. It was always looking for me.
This is a good story. Yeah.
So I ended up staying in the restaurant industry for another 5 years, and I managed a couple of places. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, fast forward, long story short, I ended up getting sick. And that's where the real transition happened. In 2013, I got diagnosed with leukemia. And that was like a real wide eye-opener. So that was where I decided that I really needed to make some changes. I needed to make some hard changes and really decide where I wanted to go in life. I knew that I didn't want to be in the restaurant industry anymore. I was tired of it. I was, if I'm honest, I was drinking too much. I was smoking too much.
Right.
I wasn't a heavy smoker, but I was smoking.
Yes.
So all of these like unhealthy habits. And then when you get diagnosed with something like that, you're just like, okay, I need to make some changes. And so you start asking questions, about food and diet and, other habits like drinking, alcohol, smoking, stress, all those kind of things. And one of the biggest messages that I got from my oncologist was, I asked him, I said, so I guess I got to quit smoking and I should probably minimize my drinking and, I should probably start, I was always fit. I was always working out.
Yes.
But I wasn't at my fittest or at my healthiest at that time. Not just because of, obviously because of the diagnosis, but, because of the habits and whatnot. So when I asked my oncologist about all these things that I should be doing, he was like, listen, the biggest thing you need to do is just manage your stress. So whatever that is, whatever that looks like for you, breathing, exercise, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
That's the biggest thing. He's like, as a doctor, am I going to tell you you don't have to quit smoking? Obviously, I'm a doctor. I'm going to tell you to quit smoking, but is it really going to have that much of an impact on the specific disease that you have? Probably not. Manage your stress.
Because the kind of cancer you have is something that you can live with for a long period of time.
Yeah, there's no cure for it.
And how do you manage it?
Well, we did through treatment. So we went through chemotherapy and...
you never told me that.
I never did that?
No.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
It's not something that, that I'm ashamed of or that I'm not, that I'm like, I keep buried in my soul or whatever. It's not, but it's also not something that I walk around and advertise as a badge of honor.
But it's not really your story, because you've kind of gone so far beyond that. Like you would never even think that you were living with cancer or had cancer because you're so seemingly healthy and strong.
Yeah, I mean, I consider myself at 52 now to be pretty fit for my age. I think I'm actually, very fit for my age.
Yes.
But, and the type of leukemia that I have is it's not aggressive. It's very slow in terms of how it proceeds. The chemotherapy that I did was very intense.
Right.
So if that's the right word.
So lifestyle really matters for you, though, in terms of really caring for yourself and looking after your body, reducing your stress.
100%. I mean, I was always into that. I had some bad habits, obviously, but I was always into working out, playing sports, making sure that I'm as healthy as I can possibly be. And then that's where I was like, okay, I need to make a change. I moved to South America. I lived in South America for a year. And then that's when I decided to get into the fitness industry. So I got back from South America, got myself a certification, started working with a company teaching boot camps in parks, and then eventually led me to visit a friend at a Good Life in downtown Toronto.
Yes.
And the manager introduced herself to me, and I started talking to her, and she almost immediately hired me on the spot. I think possibly, because I was, because of my age, she's like, "Or you've got some life experience. We can sort of figure out the rest of this stuff as we go." So yeah, she basically hired me on the spot. I started at Good Life. This would have been January of 2017, 2016.
I think you said
it's been 10 years.
Yeah.
Almost.
Mm-hmm.
I'm almost at my 9-year anniversary.
Wow.
With Good Life.
Wow. So I feel like this is part of why we connected, because when I walked into Good Life a few years ago, really struggling, part of my story is that I had I guess almost 5 years ago, they discovered a tumor or growth. It wasn't called tumor then, but it was a growth on one of my kidneys. And I had to have it removed. And I actually came to you after I had the surgery, a few months after the surgery. And I said, do you think, like, what do you think what do you think I can do in terms of, I want to be careful, but I want to like really rebuild my body. And I hadn't had cancer, but it could have been, right? I probably, who knows what it was. We didn't know. We just knew it was moving quickly. Yeah. And you were like, you just have to start looking after yourself. You said, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, don't think about what you were or what you had. Think about what you are right now.
Yeah. And my approach to fitness is always, to meet people where they are. A lot of times people are intimidated to get into fitness or to get a trainer or to get to a gym because they're like, it's going to be hard. It's going to be, it's going to be long. It's like, it's something that I'm going to have to do forever. And, if people aren't into that kind of stuff, it's hard to get started. And then there's the intimidation factor as well, right? They walk into a gym and this trainer's like, this beefy trainer comes up and they're like, hey, what are you doing? We're going to get you fit. And then people are like, I don't know.
Yeah. Is it going to hurt?
Is it going to hurt? Like, how is this going to take long? I have to get my hair done. And,
Right.
So my approach is always like, I'm not a salesperson. So I often don't do very well in the 1 hour consultations. But when I can spend a little bit more time with people, we have little small packages that you can get at Good Life. And when I spend 3 to 4 to 6 sessions with people, I tend to demonstrate value, and I'm just direct with people. I'm like, this is what we're going to do. This is what you need to do. And we're going to do it at a pace that's right for you. Mm-hmm. And we're going to do it based on your goals.
Yes.
And based on the opportunities that present themselves. And we're going to go in that direction. So when you deliver that message with confidence and care,
yeah,
for sure, it puts people at ease a little bit, and they're like, okay, I'll give this a try. I'll give it a try and see where it goes. And that's why those little packages for me, they're very impactful. You did one of those little packages.
We did. We started off with one of those packages, I think 4 years ago, and then it kind of progressed from there. But the piece that was really transformative for me was, one, you said, we don't have to allow your weight, the number on the scale, to dictate what we're doing. What we want to do is build strength, and you want to feel good.
100%.
And that was delivered immediately. But there was something else, which was, correct me, tell me what the right term is. It's progressive overload.
Yes.
So that was life changing.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So
what is it, number one? And
well, progressive overload, quite simply, is just, you start at a certain place and you have to keep overloading the muscles in order for there to be an adaptation process. So if you, for example, if I give you a dumbbell to lift, like a bicep curl, for instance, and it's 10 pounds and you do 10 times.
Yes.
And you keep doing that for months and months and months. Well, eventually there's not going to be any adaptation anymore. It's like walking. When you first started walking at 2 or 3 years old, however old you were, it was difficult and it was challenging for your muscles because you didn't have the coordination, you didn't have the muscle strength, you didn't know what the heck was going on. 40 years later, 50 years later, you don't even think about walking. You just walk. You can walk in the dark. You can walk with your eyes closed. It's just like so it's the same thing with when you're trying to transform your body, when you're trying to build strength or you're trying to build muscle. If you don't progressively overload, the adaptation is not going to continue happening and the changes aren't going to happen anymore, and you're not going to get the most out of it that you possibly can. You're not going to get optimal results. Right.
Well, what I think I'm sort of marveling at and makes me feel really hopeful is, as you know, I'm a yoga teacher and have been for a long time.
Yeah.
But I found yoga.
Love yoga.
But
I need to do it more.
Yoga, I found, started to get harder as I got older. As I got to my late 40s, yoga started to get, like I was a little more uncoordinated. I couldn't hold poses for long. And then when we started to work together, my yoga sessions, my yoga practice, and I'm not talking about teaching. Teaching is different from practicing.
Right.
I felt my practice was waning, and that's why I didn't love teaching. And then when my practice got better, I could start teaching again.
Right.
And I think for a lot of women, you know, who are losing, well, men and women, you know, losing muscle mass from your late 30s and on, if you're not doing weight training, you actually could end up hurting yourself in yoga. That was, you know, that is a major concern.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's balance. There's balance and harmony in everything, right? You know, I can tell an individual, like, you need to get stronger, you need to lift more weights, you need to build more muscle, and that could all be true. But eventually, it's going to lead to tight muscles. It's going to lead to immobility to a certain extent. And so you now have to sort of start looking at what modalities do I need to introduce to mitigate those things. And, you know, that could be yoga.
Yeah.
You need to stretch more. You need to start stretching.
Tai Chi.
Whatever, any of those things that could help, because it's a process, right? You're when you're strength training and you're muscle building, you're damaging your body. And it's the adaptation and the recovery that where the body starts to develop and the body starts to change. So it's not necessarily in the workout. The workout is the work that does the damage, and providing that you're doing the right kind of damage, not the wrong kind of damage.
Of course.
So is there transfer to, you know, yoga? Yes. Is there yoga? Does yoga help transfer to strength training? 100%. If you have joint immobilities that are preventing you from doing certain types of lifting, yoga can help you with the mobility, and then that can transfer to your ability to get into positions that you may not have been able to get into before.
Talk to me about VO2 and oxygen capacity. And I don't know why I have to articulate that physically while I'm telling you, but
is that your demonstration of lungs expanding?
Yeah, you know, lungs expanding as wide as a tennis court.
So, I mean, I'm by no means an expert on the science of improving your VO2 max, but you know, essentially what it is it's like I was talking about earlier. It's balance, you know. So there's strength, there's muscle building, there's mobility, there's, you know, being able flexible and stretching and whatnot, and then there's, you know, strength, heart strength.
Right.
They all work in unison.
Yes.
They all make the body work harmoniously. And when you do too much of one thing and not enough of another, then that's potentially sometimes when you start noticing imbalances or differences, or what I like to call opportunities. But the importance of VO2 max is that you need to challenge your heart, because if you're not challenging your heart, then you're going to be less resilient in life. So, for example, if, you know, the way I always approach it is, we can come into a workout, we can do 6, maybe 8 exercises in an hour.
Right.
You know, because you have to rest in between exercises and whatnot, allow your muscles to recover and whatnot a little bit. But if you can increase your capability, your cardiac output, your ability to intake oxygen and distribute it through your body, you may now be able to start doing 10 exercises in that workout. So now you're becoming more efficient, you're becoming more resilient, and it allows your body to do more, to increase the capacity of the workload, so you can be more efficient in terms of your time, right? You can, instead of having 3 workouts in a week, you might do 2.5 workouts, or whatever, because you can get more done
within that one period.
Yeah. And then, you know, VO2 max, the importance of VO2 max, and you know, it's right up there with strength training, if not maybe more important than strength training in terms of longevity. The slower you move, the faster you're probably going to die. If you can keep moving, you know, and keep the speed as much as possible, you know, it's going to make your life quality a lot better and a lot easier as you move.
Yes, more efficiently, more effectively, and like living, like really, I think it's a message to the body, to the mind as well. I'm alive.
Yeah. And, there are modalities that you have to introduce into your training that in challenge your VO2 max. And that's where, you need to get really specific because, just jumping on a treadmill and doing some light cardio and stuff like that has benefit, but you have to, at some point, during the week, you have to challenge your heart to the point where it's like you're getting to maximal heart rates, and that really
the sprinting was really helpful.
Sprinting,
rowing,
intervals, rowing. I mean, there's a variety of ways that you can do it. Typically, when you're testing somebody's VO2 max, you want to do something that has low impact. So running is not typically. It's not optimal because there's, your
momentum,
joints. There's joints, compression and stuff like that happens with running. So doing things like assault bikes or rowing are good ways of testing and challenging your VO2 max without incorporating any sort of joint manipulation.
Wow.
So
I can't wait to see you next month.
Well, I hope I'm looking forward to it. You are a fantastic client. You're a hard worker too.
We took a little break.
Yeah. And
what that break showed me is that I need to see you. But what's next? What's next for you? Like, how do you're sort of at this place where all these different pieces of your life are kind of coming together and you're growing into something more or new, or are you going to continue what you're doing? What's happening?
Well, with work, I'm currently figuring that out. I'm trying to get a little bit more into teaching. I actually have a meeting with my boss in an hour to talk about some courses that I want to teach for some of the trainers. I'm also considering opening it up to members at the gym and stuff like that, just so it makes their working out experience, the transition, a little bit easier, a little less intimidating. So, we're going to have a discussion about that. Right now, especially since I moved out to Burlington 3 years ago, I've really been doing my best, not always succeeding at nurturing and fostering my relationship with my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So I'm working a little bit less right now because of that.
That's great.
Yeah, we're just trying to do more stuff together. We're trying to enjoy our life together. And so I'm not necessarily working as much as I could be. And I'm okay with that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it allows me to, like I said, enjoy my time with my girlfriend, enjoy my life.
Yes.
But yeah, I'm definitely eager to get a little bit more into teaching and to see where that can get me to. Maybe podcasts.
I think, listen.
I do have an interest in getting into public speaking, and
you absolutely should. I think one of the best parts of training with you is, and this is not a sales pitch at all, are the conversations and the communion around shared ideas, differences, learning from each other. But you just bring so much to a session when someone's working with you. I'm really grateful, and I love that you're talking about building your life with your partner and growing that, because I think sometimes we get so focused on success and being at the pinnacle of our skill is that we can forget about the value of our relationships. Yeah. And I happen to be someone who very much likes my husband. I mean, yes, I love him. We've been married for 22 years, but I actually like him. He's so interesting. Yeah. So I think, why not be able to spend that kind of time with your partner, invest in that, right?
100%.
Listen, we could go on all day. Give me 3 tips to someone who's out there right now, and specifically, let's talk to women and men over 50. They're sitting on the couch, or they're on their computer, they're on a chair. What can they do today? 3 things that's going to change how their body functions.
Yeah, when it comes to moving, find something. My best advice to people is just find something that you like doing. If that's tennis, if that's walking, if that's weightlifting, just get started with some sort of movement pattern before it's too late. I've seen it too much in my life where people waited too long until there was some major issue, heart condition, diabetes, whatever it might be, before they started to change their habits and change their lives into getting into fitness. So my initial advice would be just go to a gym, go to your nearest gym, figure it out, find out where your nearest gym is, walk in, ask questions, be curious, find out how you can get started, and
don't be ashamed.
And don't be ashamed, and don't be intimidated. I mean, that's the biggest misconception, is that people think that, oh, if I get a trainer, if I start working out, it's going to be like they're going to just beat me up. And it's not true.
Not true.
I have a very conservative approach, and I meet people where they're at. If we can push, we push. If we can't, we can't. Whatever works for the person. So yeah, tip number 1 is get into a gym as soon as you can. Get a membership. Try to eat better.
Mm-hmm.
And try to improve your happiness through stress management. I would say those are the 3 biggest things.
Wow, there's your course.
Yeah. There it is.
There's your course.
Maybe.
Listen, Bruno, thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity and your care and your kindness and your friendship. Thank you for teaching me to carry my weight plus.
Oh yeah, you were getting really strong.
So
we're going to get back to that soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So I continue to be grateful for you. And my friend, I wish you nothing but goodness and wellness and strength.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Namaste.
Namaste. Namaste. I love
it. My friends, thank you for joining me on Let's Talk, produced by Wise Mindly Inc. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take action, reflect, or embrace on a new way of thinking, on a new path. And if you enjoyed today's episode, and hopefully you did, don't forget to subscribe, share, and even leave a review. Reviews matter. They allow us to do way more than we're doing now. Let's continue the journey of growth and well-being together. Until next time, I'm Coach Che Marville. Stay connected, stay curious, and let's keep talking.